Think you know everything about 1970s blaxploitation cinema? Think again. Hell Up in Harlem hides shocking secrets. A star who wasn't really there, rejected James Brown music that became legendary, and weekend-only filming that fooled even its own lead actor about which scenes he appeared in. Fact 1. Weekend warriors only. Most movies are filmed during regular business hours with cast and crew working Monday through Friday, but Hell Up in Harlem broke all the rules by filming exclusively on weekends. Director Larry Cohen and star Fred Williamson were both committed to other major projects during the week, creating one of Hollywood's most unusual production schedules. Cohen was simultaneously directing his horror film It's Alive for Warner Brothers, while Williamson was starring in the Universal action movie That Man Bolt. When American International Pictures demanded a sequel to Black Caesar as quickly as possible, neither man wanted to abandon their other commitments. Instead of walking away from the project, they came up with an unconventional solution that would push both their stamina and creativity to the limit. Every Friday evening, Cohen would wrap up filming It's Alive and immediately shift gears to prepare for Hell Up in Harlem. Williamson would finish his work on That Man Bolt and rush to join Cohen for weekend shooting sessions that lasted from Saturday morning through Sunday night. This meant the entire movie was created during a series of intense weekend marathons, with the cast and crew working around the clock to capture as much footage as possible before Monday morning arrived. The weekend-only schedule created enormous pressure to work fast and efficiently. Cohen later admitted that this time constraint contributed to the film's improvised feel, since there was barely enough time to plan scenes properly, let alone reshoot anything that didn't work. The cast would arrive on Saturday morning, often not knowing exactly what they would be filming, with Cohen making up scenes and dialogue as they went along. This unusual approach to filmmaking meant that Hell Up in Harlem was essentially created during stolen moments between two other major productions, making it one of the most unconventionally scheduled movies in Hollywood history. Fact 2. The Vanishing Star Mystery. Fred Williamson's absence from his own movie became so extreme that director Larry Cohen had to resort to elaborate camera tricks and body doubles to make it appear that the star was actually present for most of Hell Up in Harlem. Because Williamson was committed to filming That Man Bolt during weekdays, Cohen found himself shooting the majority of scenes without his leading man, creating one of cinema's most creative examples of working around an unavailable actor. Cohen developed a sophisticated system of deception to hide Williamson's absence from audiences. He positioned cameras strategically behind a body double who stood in for Williamson during long shots and medium shots, while the other actors in the scene would deliver their lines and react as if they were speaking directly to the real Fred Williamson. The double would remain silent during filming, and later Williamson would record his dialogue in a Los Angeles recording studio, with his voice dubbed over the scenes to create the illusion that he had been there all along. This technique became so seamless that it created an unexpected side effect. Fred Williamson himself became confused about which scenes he had actually filmed and which ones featured his body double. Years later, Williamson would insist that he appeared in certain scenes where only his double had been present, proving just how convincing Cohen's directorial sleight of hand had become. Cohen was particularly proud of pulling off this cinematic magic trick, later explaining that he knew exactly which camera angles he needed and which shots were essential to make the illusion work. He admitted that probably no other director could have successfully created an entire movie this way, but his experience and precise planning allowed him to construct scenes that never really existed, making audiences see something on screen that had never actually happened during filming. After viewing the completed film, Williamson reportedly complained that the body double was too overweight to convincingly portray him. Fact 3. James Brown's $1 million rejection. James Brown spent most of 1973 creating what he believed would be the perfect soundtrack for Hell Up in Harlem, working closely with his musical director Fred Wesley to craft songs that would match the film's gritty urban atmosphere. Brown was confident about landing the soundtrack job since he had already successfully scored the original Black Caesar film, and American International Pictures had initially contracted him to provide the music for this sequel as well. Brown and Wesley watched rough cuts of the movie and carefully composed tracks that would complement specific scenes, with the revenge-themed title song originally written as Revenge before becoming The Payback. The godfather of soul put significant time and creative energy into the project, believing this would be his chance to create the funkiest blaxploitation soundtrack of all time and cement his dominance in the film music world. However, when Brown delivered the completed soundtrack to the movie's producers, they rejected the entire project with a dismissive comment that it was just the same old James Brown stuff. The rejection stung Brown deeply, especially since executives at American International Pictures had already grown frustrated with his tendency to deliver songs that were much longer than expected for previous film projects. Rather than let the music go to waste, an angry James Brown decided to release the rejected soundtrack as a standalone double album called The Payback in December of 1973. This decision turned out to be a stroke of genius, as the album became one of the highest points of Brown's entire recording career and is now considered a landmark achievement in funk music. The title track reached #1 on the rhythm and blues charts and later became one of the most sampled songs in hip-hop history, with artists like Kendrick Lamar, Nas, and En Vogue using pieces of the music in their own recordings. Fact 4. Dead Man Walking sequel. Hell Up in Harlem technically should not exist because the main character Tommy Gibbs was definitively killed at the end of Black Caesar, but American International Pictures managed to resurrect their profitable gangster through some clever film editing after the movie had already been released to theaters. The original ending of Black Caesar showed Tommy Gibbs dying from his gunshot wounds in a powerful and tragic conclusion that completed his rise and fall story arc perfectly. However, when preview audiences saw this ending during test screenings, they reacted with anger and disappointment at seeing their anti-hero meet such a definitive fate. The negative audience response alarmed studio executives who were already planning to capitalize on Black Caesar's success with a quick sequel, so they made an unprecedented decision to recall the theatrical prints that had already been distributed to movie theaters across the country. Working with remarkable speed, American International Pictures edited out the specific moment of Tommy's death from the film's climax, leaving his fate ambiguous rather than showing him actually dying on screen. This last-minute change allowed audiences to believe that Tommy might have survived his injuries, creating just enough uncertainty to justify bringing Fred Williamson back for another movie. The studio moved so quickly with this decision that producer Samuel Z. Arkoff was able to recall and re-edit the prints before Hell Up in Harlem went into production just 10 months later. Interestingly, the original version with Tommy's death remained intact in European theatrical releases and later appeared on VHS tapes and DVD releases, meaning that different audiences around the world saw completely different endings to Black Caesar depending on when and where they watched it. This corporate decision to literally bring a dead character back to life purely for commercial reasons represents one of the most unusual examples of a studio manipulating a film's ending specifically to enable a sequel. Fact 5. The Hearst Mansion Deception. Director Larry Cohen saved money on location fees by using his own personal mansion in the Coldwater Canyon section of the Hollywood Hills as two completely different settings in Hell Up in Harlem, creating a bizarre situation where the same house served as both the villain's headquarters and the hero's safe haven. Cohen's home doubled as both District Attorney D'Angelo's corrupt government office and Tommy Gibbs' luxurious California hideout, with audiences never realizing they were looking at the exact same building in scenes that were supposed to take place in entirely different locations. The mansion itself had a fascinating Hollywood history that made it perfect for a movie about power, corruption, and fallen fortunes. The grand estate was originally constructed by the wealthy Hearst family, the same newspaper dynasty that inspired Citizen Kane, giving the property an air of old money prestige that worked well for both a corrupt politician's office and a successful gangster's retreat. Before Cohen acquired the property, the mansion had belonged to two other notable Hollywood figures who both lost it during painful divorce proceedings. Director Sam Fuller, known for gritty war movies and crime films, had owned the house before his marriage ended and forced him to give up the property as part of his settlement. The mansion then passed to actor Clint Walker, best known for playing the title character in the Western television series Cheyenne. But he also lost the house when his own divorce required him to surrender the estate. Cohen's decision to use his home as multiple film locations was both practical and personal, allowing him to maintain complete control over the shooting schedule while avoiding expensive location rental fees. The arrangement also meant that Cohen could literally walk from his bedroom to his film set, making the already compressed weekend filming schedule even more efficient for a director who was juggling multiple projects simultaneously. Fact 6. Benihana's purple Rolls-Royce, one of the most eye-catching vehicles in Hell Up in Harlem, was a stunning purple Rolls-Royce that perfectly matched the film's flashy 1970s aesthetic. But this luxury car didn't belong to the movie studio or any car rental company used by the production. Instead, the distinctive automobile was the personal property of Yunosuke Oki, the Japanese entrepreneur who founded the famous Benihana restaurant chain that became synonymous with theatrical tableside cooking and flaming onion volcanoes. Aoki had built his restaurant empire by transforming traditional Japanese cooking into an entertaining dining experience for American audiences, and his success had clearly afforded him some extremely expensive tastes in luxury automobiles. The purple Rolls-Royce represented the kind of ostentatious wealth that perfectly suited a character like Tommy Gibbs, who needed to project power and success through his material possessions as much as through his criminal activities. The connection between a Japanese restaurant magnate and a blaxploitation gangster movie might seem random, but it actually reflects the informal network of contacts and favors that often kept low-budget films like Hell Up in Harlem operational during their rushed production schedules. Rather than spending precious budget money on renting an expensive luxury car from a traditional movie vehicle supplier, someone connected to the production was able to arrange for Aoki to lend his personal Rolls-Royce to the film. This arrangement benefited everyone involved, as Aoki received some free publicity for his restaurant chain, while the movie got access to exactly the kind of flashy vehicle that would make Tommy Gibbs look appropriately successful and intimidating. The purple color was particularly perfect for the film's bold visual style, standing out dramatically against the urban backgrounds of New York and Los Angeles, where most of the action takes place. Fact 7. Costume theft from another movie. Fred Williamson solved his wardrobe problems for Hell Up in Harlem by simply taking clothes directly from the costume department of That Man Bolt, the Universal Pictures action film he was shooting during the same time period, creating an unusual situation where expensive studio costumes appeared in a completely different movie without permission. This creative borrowing arrangement meant that Tommy Gibbs ended up wearing outfits that were originally designed and paid for by Universal Pictures, even though they were appearing in an American International Pictures production. The costume theft was made possible by Williamson's unique position of working on both films simultaneously, giving him access to two different studio wardrobes and the opportunity to move clothing between productions without anyone immediately noticing. Since Williamson was filming That Man Bolt during weekdays and Hell Up in Harlem on weekends, he could literally wear the same expensive suits and accessories in both movies, maximizing his stylish appearance, while helping the lower-budget blaxploitation film achieve a more polished look. This arrangement was particularly beneficial for Hell Up in Harlem, which was operating on a much smaller budget than Williamson's Universal film, and might not have been able to afford the kind of high-quality wardrobe that would make Tommy Gibbs look appropriately successful and intimidating. Universal Pictures had invested significantly more money in costume design for That Man Bolt, so by borrowing those clothes, Williamson was essentially giving his blaxploitation character access to a much more expensive and sophisticated wardrobe than the production could have otherwise provided. The borrowing went undetected during production, and it's unclear whether Universal Pictures ever discovered that their costume investments were appearing in a rival studio's movie. This cross-studio costume sharing represents one of the more audacious examples of creative resource management in low-budget filmmaking, where necessity and opportunity combine to create an unofficial wardrobe exchange program. Fact 8. Hospital of the Drunk and Delusional. Actor James Dixon revealed one of the most surreal filming experiences in movie history when he described shooting scenes for Hell Up in Harlem inside what appeared to be a functioning hospital but was actually an alcoholic recovery facility filled with patients suffering from delirium tremens, commonly known as the DTs. The location was a former hospital in North Hollywood off Victory Boulevard that had been converted into a drying-out center for people recovering from severe alcohol addiction, creating a bizarre backdrop for action sequences involving gangsters and police chases. Larry Cohen's decision to use this location became even more complicated because he was simultaneously filming his horror movie It's Alive at the same facility, meaning that Dixon and other actors would sometimes shoot Hell Up in Harlem scenes in the morning while wearing police uniforms, then return later in the day dressed as different characters to film sequences involving a murderous monster baby for the completely separate horror film. The patients lying in beds throughout the recovery wards had no idea what was happening as actors in police uniforms ran through their treatment areas, chasing or being chased by other actors playing criminals and gangsters. Dixon described how the people suffering from withdrawal symptoms would watch in complete bewilderment as this chaos unfolded around them, unable to distinguish between their own hallucinations and the actual movie production happening in their midst. The situation became even more confusing for the patients when Dixon would reappear later the same day in a different costume, this time playing Lieutenant Perkins and chasing the killer baby monster from It's Alive through the same wards where he had just been filming gangster scenes. The recovering alcoholics had no way to understand that they were witnessing two different movie productions, creating a nightmarish experience where reality and fiction blended together in ways that probably seemed like extensions of their own withdrawal symptoms. Fact 9. Preemptive death scenes. Larry Cohen developed an unusual insurance policy against difficult actors by secretly filming death scenes for cast members he suspected might become problematic during the already chaotic production of Hell Up in Harlem, giving himself the option to kill off their characters and write them out of the story if they became too troublesome to work with. This behind-the-scenes strategy reflected Cohen's experience with low-budget filmmaking, where losing an actor mid-production could destroy an entire project, especially when working with the compressed weekend-only shooting schedule that left no room for delays or drama. Cohen's most elaborate preemptive death scene involved Tony King, who played the important role of Zack, Tommy Gibbs' right-hand man who eventually becomes his enemy and rival. Without King's knowledge, Cohen filmed a complete sequence showing Zack being shot in the back while riding the subway, creating a dramatic death scene that would have allowed the director to eliminate the character entirely if King had caused any problems during production. The subway death scene was professionally shot and edited, complete with blood effects and dramatic staging that would have fit seamlessly into the final film if Cohen had decided to use it. King remained completely unaware that his character's potential demise had already been captured on camera, and he continued working on the movie without knowing that his professional behavior was essentially being tested against footage of his own character's violent end. Fortunately for King, he proved to be cooperative and professional throughout the filming process, so Cohen never needed to use the death scene that had been prepared as a backup plan. The unused footage remained hidden away, representing one of the most paranoid examples of directorial preparation in film history, where an actor's job security literally depended on their behavior matching up to a secret death scene that could be inserted into the movie at any moment. Fact 10. The director's bedroom set. Larry Cohen crossed a significant boundary between his personal and professional life when he decided to film the romantic love scene between Fred Williamson and Margaret Avery using his own personal bedroom and bed, creating an uncomfortably intimate situation where the director's most private space became part of the movie set. This decision went far beyond simply using his house as a filming location and entered territory that most directors would consider too personal and inappropriate for their productions. The love scene was an important moment in Hell Up in Harlem, showing the developing relationship between Tommy Gibbs and Sister Jennifer, the religious woman who becomes his girlfriend and moral compass throughout the story. Rather than renting a hotel room or building a bedroom set in a studio, Cohen made the unusual choice to bring his actors into his own sleeping quarters and have them perform their romantic scene on the same bed where he slept every night. This arrangement created an awkward dynamic for everyone involved in filming the sequence, as Cohen had to direct Williamson and Avery in intimate scenes while they were literally lying on his personal mattress and surrounded by his private belongings. The actors had to maintain their professional focus and chemistry while being acutely aware that they were performing in their director's most personal space, adding an extra layer of psychological complexity to what was already a challenging scene to film. Cohen's decision to use his own bed represents one of the most unusual examples of a director blurring the lines between his personal life and his filmmaking, taking the already intimate nature of directing love scenes and making it even more personal by involving his own bedroom furniture. The choice reflects both the extremely low-budget nature of the production and Cohen's willingness to sacrifice his own privacy and comfort to save money and maintain creative control over every aspect of his movie. Fact 11. Godfather writer's son in Shootout. One of the most unexpected cameo appearances in Hell Up in Harlem came from Eugene Puzo, the son of Mario Puzo, the legendary author who wrote the Godfather novel and co-wrote the screenplays for Francis Ford Coppola's acclaimed Godfather films. Eugene appears as an extra during the violent beach house shootout sequence, creating a fascinating connection between the most prestigious gangster saga in cinema history and this gritty blaxploitation sequel that was being filmed on weekends with a mostly improvised script. The beach house shootout was one of the film's most elaborate action sequences, featuring multiple gunfights, explosions, and what Larry Cohen later admitted were probably too many confusing plot developments for audiences to follow easily. During this chaotic scene, Eugene Puzo can be spotted among the various actors and extras who were caught in the crossfire as Tommy Gibbs and his enemies engaged in their violent confrontation at the California beach location. Eugene's presence on the Hell Up in Harlem set represents an interesting intersection between two very different approaches to gangster filmmaking that were happening simultaneously in early 1970s Hollywood. While his father Mario was crafting the sophisticated operatic crime epic that would become The Godfather Part 2, Eugene was participating in Larry Cohen's much more raw and immediate take on criminal violence that emphasized action over character development and improvisation over careful scripting. The connection becomes even more intriguing when considering that both films were exploring themes of power, corruption, and family loyalty within criminal organizations, but from completely different cultural perspectives, and with vastly different production budgets and artistic ambitions. Eugene Puzo's appearance in the beach house scene serves as a small but symbolic bridge between the refined world of prestige filmmaking and the energetic, street-level approach of blaxploitation cinema during one of the most creative periods in American movie history. Fact 12. Soul food torture scene. Hell Up in Harlem includes one of the most culturally provocative and bizarre torture sequences in blaxploitation cinema, where Tommy Gibbs and his gang capture Italian mobsters and force them to eat traditional African-American soul food as a form of psychological and physical punishment. The scene represents a complete reversal of racial power dynamics, with black gangsters using food as a weapon against white criminals who are accustomed to being in positions of dominance and control. The torture menu includes some of the most stereotypical soul food dishes that white audiences might find unfamiliar or unappetizing, including chitlins, which are cleaned pig intestines, collard greens cooked with pork fat, pig's feet served whole, black-eyed peas, and cornbread. The meal concludes with watermelon served for dessert, deliberately invoking one of the most problematic racial stereotypes in American culture, but turning it into a weapon wielded by black characters against white victims. During the scene, one of Tommy's associates, a cook played by Esther Sutherland, cheerfully describes each dish as the terrified Italian gangsters are forced to consume food that represents a cultural experience completely foreign to their background and expectations. Tommy delivers the memorable line, "Now that's what they call soul food," while watching his enemies struggle with the unfamiliar flavors and textures, followed by, "Eat hearty, gentlemen," as he observes their discomfort. The sequence works on multiple levels, functioning as both dark comedy and social commentary that inverts traditional power relationships by making food into an instrument of cultural domination. Larry Cohen's decision to include this scene reflects his background as a comedy writer and his willingness to push boundaries by using racial stereotypes in unexpected ways that challenge audience expectations about who holds power and who becomes victimized in criminal conflicts. Fact 13. Airplane chase absurdity. Hell Up in Harlem features what may be the most ridiculous chase sequence in action movie history, where Tommy Gibbs pursues his enemy Tony King's character Zach in a confrontation that begins on foot in New York, continues with both men separately boarding commercial airline flights to Los Angeles, and concludes with a violent showdown in the baggage claim area of Los Angeles International Airport. This absurd sequence defies all logic about how criminal pursuits actually work, and creates a chase scene that spans 3,000 miles and multiple forms of transportation. The sequence begins with a traditional foot chase through New York streets, with Tommy running after Zach in what appears to be a conventional action scene, until both characters separately arrive at the airport and book tickets on different flights to California. Rather than trying to catch his enemy before he boards the plane, Tommy decides that the most logical course of action is to purchase his own airline ticket and continue the pursuit at 30,000 feet above the United States. During the cross-country flights, both men are shown sitting in their respective airplane seats, presumably planning their next moves, while flight attendants serve drinks and other passengers remain completely unaware that they are traveling with two armed gangsters who intend to resume their violent conflict upon landing. The scene creates the bizarre image of a criminal chase being temporarily suspended for several hours, while both participants comply with airline safety regulations and behave like normal passengers. The pursuit reaches its climax in the LAX baggage claim area, where Tommy and Zach finally confront each other among the luggage carousels and unsuspecting travelers who have no idea they are witnessing the conclusion of a chase that began on the opposite coast. This sequence perfectly captures Larry Cohen's willingness to prioritize entertainment value over logical storytelling, creating an action scene that is simultaneously thrilling and completely preposterous. Fact 14. Movie marquee Easter egg. Larry Cohen included a clever meta-cinematic reference in Gloria Hendry's final scene by having her character walk past a movie theater marquee advertising across 110th Street, the blaxploitation film that Hendry had starred in immediately before being cast in Black Caesar, creating a moment where the actress essentially encounters her own previous work within the fictional world of Hell Up in Harlem. This subtle detail represents one of the most sophisticated inside jokes in a movie that was otherwise known for its improvised and chaotic production style. Across 110th Street was a 1972 crime drama starring Anthony Quinn and Yaphet Kotto that dealt with conflicts between Italian organized crime families and African-American street gangs in Harlem, making it thematically similar to the Black Caesar series, but with a much bigger budget and more established Hollywood stars. Hendry played a significant supporting role in that film, which helped establish her credentials in the blaxploitation genre and likely contributed to her being cast as Tommy Gibbs' ex-wife Helen in Black Caesar. The movie theater marquee Easter egg works on multiple levels, serving as both a tribute to Hendry's previous work and an acknowledgement of the interconnected nature of blaxploitation cinema during the early 1970s. For audiences who recognize the reference, seeing Hendry walk past advertising for her own previous movie created a surreal moment that blurred the lines between her real acting career and her fictional character's world. Cohen's decision to include this detail demonstrates his awareness of film history and his appreciation for the actors who were helping to define the blaxploitation genre, even though Hell Up in Harlem was being made under extremely rushed circumstances with minimal planning. The marquee reference also suggests that Cohen was thinking about his film's place within the broader landscape of African-American action cinema, positioning Hell Up in Harlem as part of an ongoing cultural conversation about representation and power in Hollywood filmmaking. Fact 15. Script improvised. During filming, Larry Cohen openly admitted that Hell Up in Harlem was created with only half a completed screenplay, forcing him to literally write and rewrite the story while cameras were rolling and actors were waiting for their next scenes to be explained to them. This extreme approach to filmmaking meant that Cohen was essentially creating a feature-length movie through pure improvisation, making up plot points, character motivations, and dialogue on the spot as the weekend filming sessions progressed from location to location throughout New York and Los Angeles. The improvised nature of the production became so apparent in the finished film that Cohen later described Hell Up in Harlem as a 90-minute montage movie rather than a traditional narrative, acknowledging that the final result felt more like a series of disconnected action sequences than a coherent story with beginning, middle, and end. Cohen's assessment was remarkably honest for a director discussing his own work, admitting that the rushed production schedule and lack of preparation had created something closer to an extended music video than a conventional motion picture. This seat-of-the-pants approach to screenwriting meant that actors often arrived on set without knowing what their characters would be doing or saying in upcoming scenes, creating an atmosphere of constant uncertainty that somehow translated into an energetic and unpredictable viewing experience. Cohen would literally write scenes in his head while scouting locations, then explain the action and dialogue to his cast moments before filming began, trusting that everyone's professional instincts would compensate for the lack of traditional preparation. The improvised scripting process also meant that Cohen was writing the script as he went along, knowing exactly which camera angles and editing cuts he would need to make the disparate scenes work together in post-production. This method required an extraordinary level of confidence and filmmaking experience, as Cohen had to visualize the entire movie in his mind while simultaneously creating it piece by piece during those compressed weekend shooting sessions.